Republican lawmakers have voted to essentially get rid of an Obama-era action that would ban severely mentally ill individuals from obtaining lethal weapons. Guns, to be specific. Now, this was something that Barack Obama had worked on for a few years, and it finally was put into place close to the end of his second term. And now House Republicans have decided, no, we're not into this not allowing mentally ill people to have guns thing, so let's go ahead and repeal it. Now, to give you the details, the rule, which was finalized by the Social Security Administration in December, bans Social Security beneficiaries from buying guns if their disability payments are handled by an outside party due to their, quote, marked subnormal intelligence or mental illness, incompetency, condition, or disease. Now, this includes people who have severe anxiety or individuals who have schizophrenia. And the idea is, hey, you know, there should be limits to who we allow, to purchase these types of guns. And if we're worried that someone with schizophrenia might, open fire and kill innocent individuals, well, maybe we should limit their ability to buy these guns. But no, according to reports, the Republican-controlled House voted 235 to 180 in an apparent effort to improve gun ownership under President Trump. The rule affected nearly 75,000 Social Security recipients diagnosed with mental health conditions such as extreme anxiety and schizophrenia and are considered incapable of managing their own affairs. Now, there was a representative by the name of John Barrasso who wanted to defend the House's decision to vote this way. It will now go to the Senate, and if the Senate votes to get rid of this rule, of course, Trump would probably sign it into law. CNN's Allison Camerata speaks to this representative, and listen to him as he struggles to explain himself.
As I understand it, it involves 75,000 people with mental disorders so severe that they cannot work, and that they have someone else manage their Social Security benefits. How does it make sense to let them have guns?
Well, this is a new change by President Obama, a midnight regulation on his way out the door. It should be subject to a full debate, discussion, and the House has voted on it yesterday and voted to repeal that rule.
If someone has a mental illness so severe that they cannot work, should they be able to have a gun?
Well, the question is somebody able to have a gun at the same time they're receiving Social Security disability benefits? And you can take a look at how those decisions are being made. But up until last month, for 7-8 years of President Obama's term, it was fine. And how to come out with a midnight regulation at this point that maybe even members of his own party don't support seems like just another thing that President Obama has done while leaving the White House to try to gum up the works as he leaves.
Senator, are you comfortable with somebody having a mental disability and having a gun?
You can take a look at what the Constitution says, which is what I do as a physician who spent lots of time working with patients with all different backgrounds. There are clearly people who have been labeled one way or another, and I'm not comfortable with midnight recommendation by the president.
Good job answering the question / not answering the question at all. Do you feel comfortable with people who have severe mental illnesses accessing these guns? Will not answer the question, probably because the NRA is in his pocket, and of course he doesn't want to lose their funding or their support. So anyway, let me open it up to the panel.
I know that we're maybe not all the biggest fans of CNN all the time. However, I really got to hand it to that interviewer for holding him to answer a question. And she did everything that she could have done to try and get him to answer really what is the baseline question with regards to this law. Something that bothers me about how the Republicans are spinning this right now is that they're saying that this was sort of a last-minute law that Obama signed into place. Actually, they started working on this in 2012 in response to the Sandy Hook massacre. So this isn't a last-minute thing that Obama sort of sprung on the House. Like, this is something that they have been negotiating for a while. So for this guy to say, well, I mean, for him to say that, I'll call him this guy, I don't know, he's a guy. So for him to say that, you know, this is just sort of like slid in and that we haven't been able to debate it properly, you've had since 2012,
right.
December of 2012. It's absolutely misleading. And I do like CNN for at least taking him to task on responding to the baseline question of what is being proposed here, because it's very dangerous. And also, it's super petty of the NRA. It's only 75,000 people. Relax. Just
it's
like
75,000 people who are not mentally competent enough to handle their own affairs. Like, why would you give them the right to have a gun, which is a lethal weapon? Look, I don't think I'm very, I don't know, I don't even know what the right word is, but I'm not a crazy advocate of banning guns, right? Like, I want common sense gun legislation that just tries to protect people. And in this case, it's like, Republicans will only talk about, oh my God, we need to focus on mental health and all these illnesses after there's a mass shooting and there's a tragic event here in the United States. And they'll use it as a scapegoat because they don't want to talk about gun control. But they genuinely don't care about mental health care, and they certainly don't care about protecting people with disabilities. It's funny how all of a sudden they're like, we can't discriminate against people who have disabilities or mental health issues. Like, we really need to look out for them. / we want to make sure we can sell as many guns as possible so we can make the NRA happy.
There's a format for doing these types of things. We talked about propaganda a minute ago before we got going. So the thing is, you want to change the reality. As you mentioned, Grace, what you do is you stretch out this type of legislation for years and then say it happened at the last second. The same thing happened with the change in reality on the Affordable Care Act. You change the way things, certain states, certain governors wouldn't accept aspects of the Affordable Care Act so that it would actually be implemented correctly in their states. So then they say, this isn't working. I understand President Obama's given us this garbage piece of shit regulation legislation. Then once it comes in, it doesn't work. Well, you have to accept the aspects of it for it to work, and then they say it's his fault. In this aspect, you stretch it out for that long and say it was a midnight legislation put through just to disrupt the Trump administration.
President.
Constant. Yeah. Same thing with the Supreme Court. Let's push it so far. We have a whole year. What do you guys? There's a year of a president left. You just change reality and say it's someone else's fault. As you touched on, this guy brings up the benefits of people with Social Security, as if the Republicans have ever given a shit about anyone with Social Security. You mean those people with entitlements that you disdain every day? Oh, you expect to get money back from the government for things that you paid for? How dare you? That doesn't go to you. That goes to our corporate donors. And lastly, there is an aspect. I read the NRA's statement, or part of their statement about this, and how happy they are, and the talking points that they feed to their minions that are elected officials in office. One of the points that they led to was there's a person in part of the mental health, I guess an advocacy group, and he said this adds to the stigma of mental illness, keeping their guns or having them on this list of people who can't get it. And it created disincentives for mentally ill persons to seek help and benefits to which they are entitled. So now they're even more afraid to go out and get their benefits. They're putting up all these walls. It's like putting a person in front of you to protect you from any of the criticism that you may receive for your bad legislation, and continue to use them for your own benefit. And then later, when they actually need your support, you've thrown them aside. It's a playbook that I've seen so many times. We watched a lot of these clips of people spotting off bullshit and never actually said the right answer, as Barrasso didn't do there.
Yeah.
And then you just get by and say, we're the strong ones here.
These are people that have been deemed they are incapable of managing their own financial affairs. They can't even cash their own checks. And yet, they should be able to turn in their money or whatever so that they can buy a gun. It just doesn't hold any water. Yeah. So just remember that at the end of the day. We are now 75,000 people, which is, again, really a blip in the bucket in the grand scheme of things, which is why I think it's so petty and stupid. These people cannot go out and cash their checks. They are deemed incapable of doing so, and yet they are now fully capable of owning and operating a firearm. Just think about that. That should not make any sense.
There's also a list of people who aren't able to get firearms. They're like felons.
Yeah.
A lot of times felons are just people who've been in prison a couple times for drug possession or a certain amount of weed possession. You can't, where's the advocacy groups for these guys? Where's Senator Barrasso saying, hey, you guys are taking away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. They've served their time, they've paid their fines, they've been in prison twice for drugs, and now they can't get a gun. Where's the outrage? No, they don't care.
Yeah.
Those are the wrong kind of people.
You know who created journalism you could be proud of? You did. Our audience helped us hire an investigative reporting team. Now we're going to go for a second. tytnetwork.com/go. Let's build the best reporting team in the country together.